Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Hacking with Friends. I have my friend and computer science student Tim here with me today, and we're going to be diving into another PowerShell course. So we're going to take a look at PowerShell in the context of Active Directory. Now, I am not a Windows person. I am just kind of getting started with it, and we actually only just installed Windows Professional over the weekend. So I am learning a lot about Active Directory now that I have access to it, but I'm kind of relying on my friend Tim here to teach us a little bit more about what Active Directory is. Although we're not going to be touching on it too much today, we're actually going to be going over a course that Varonis offers for free. And if you're interested in PowerShell and Active Directory, I recommend checking it out because it's a really interesting class that will teach you all of the various ways you can use Active Directory to do a lot of powerful stuff. So Tim, not knowing a lot about Active Directory, but now understanding a little bit about PowerShell, can you tell me maybe what Active Directory is useful for, or like why I would want to interact with it?
Yeah, so Active Directory is a really powerful service that you can use on Windows networks to essentially, you can do things like set execution policies, you can install and upgrade software. You can pretty much from one location, you can change almost anything you want about an entire Windows network. So all the computers, like it's commonly used in like an enterprise setting. So like if you have like a school or a business, from one what's called a domain controller, which is kind of like the like
control center.
Yeah, the control center. You can basically change almost anything you want about all the computers in the network directly.
So that's like fleet management then. Like you basically have like one way that you want all these computers going out, and depending on whether it's like an endpoint device that the publics can be interacting with at like a library or something, or like an internal device that maybe like professors or like employees are going to be using, you can decide what that computer can and can't do and what might be like maybe risky behavior.
Yeah, and you can set like different levels, different groups, or they're called different domains, or there's another word for them that I totally forgot. But yeah, you can have different, essentially different groups with different types of permissions. You can restrict certain computers from doing certain things. You can allow other computers to do other things, and you can also like make sure they're up to date by directly upgrading their software or installing software directly on them or disabling features or whatever you want. You pretty much have unlimited control.
That is pretty powerful. So I would say if you're a hacker, there's kind of different levels where you can interact with the type of system, where the first level is you don't really understand it. You're just kind of standing outside throwing rocks at it. And that's where like you need to bring like a Python tool or something else that somebody else has built in order to get like privilege escalation or actually do something bad. And that's where a lot of people get caught because they have to bring a tool that they don't fully understand or they didn't write themselves because they don't understand Active Directory. And boom, they end up getting caught because that tool kind of like lets the person who's administering the network know that they're there. So if you want to be a really good hacker, I found the best way to do that is to really understand the way that this stuff works, and it's called living off the land. You can basically start administering a domain controller and you understand the way Active Directory works and you understand the way that we can like work with it to make massive changes across an entire enterprise. Well, for one, that makes us better attackers because we don't have to bring tools with us in order to start administering this stuff. So it's really, really useful to understand a little bit about Active Directory and, of course, a lot about PowerShell, which we're going to mostly focus on today, in order to be the best possible attackers and not need as much stuff to bring with us, because that all increases the possibility that we're caught, and it also decreases our ability to be stealthy and really do everything that it's possible to do with Active Directory. So we're not going to touch too much on Active Directory today, but this is a really, really cool course that Varonis has for free. So if you want to dive a little bit deeper, you can go to varonis.com/PowerShell, and you can take a look at this course that we are basically breaking out of today and just covering the very first part. So Tim, can you tell me about what we're going to learn today?
So today we're going to go over some more, I want to say in-depth basics, even though that's kind of a little bit of a paradox. We're going to go over objects, we're going to go over variables, we're going to go over modules, scripts, and then at the end we're going to create our own script with our own function that allows us to do something a little bit cool, which I'll reveal later.
Okay, awesome. Cool. So I guess today we're going to be working on Windows computers. Great.
Yes, of course. As per usual.
So we both have Windows Professional, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you need Professional with all this part, or can you do it on any Windows?
No, this part you can do on any I mean, I've only tested it on Windows 10.
Okay.
But yeah, you can do it on any version of Windows 10.
Okay, cool. So some of the more advanced stuff in the guide we were showing you does require you to have Active Directory, which means you need to have Windows Professional. But some of the stuff we're going to cover today does not. So everyone can follow along, and should be fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, let's dive right in. Yeah, so you can see right up here I have the course from Varonis. If you guys want to check more about Active Directory, you just give them some information. They don't send you anything, so don't worry. And yeah, you can check out more there. But for today's lesson, let's dive right into PowerShell. All right, so
I'm sure they do send you something, but it's free.
So far, I haven't gotten anything.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. So, but no, that doesn't mean anything about the future. All right. So, the first thing we're going to check out is objects. So I think.
So let me bring up PowerShell too, because
Sure.
I want to go along. All right, cool. Objects.
And I think the simplest way to start is just to create a custom variable. So you know how to do that, right?
No, refresh me.
Okay, so to create a variable, you just put a $ in front of the name of your variable. So I'm going to call mine string because it's just going to be a string. Equals something like Varonis. Oh, that's I don't want to put a W in front
So
of
it needs quotes around it?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it does. Especially if it's going to be a string.
Okay.
I mean, you could create like a variable called that's 3, and then that would be a different type of variable.
Because it's a number?
Yeah, because it's a number.
All right. So by putting quotes around it, it lets it know that it's a type of data, which is a string.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so if we just do that, create a string call equal to string. I was going to do Varonis, but I forgot about that.
Yeah, my Tim variable is equal to Varonis.
Okay. If we do string and then we pipe that to a commandlet called getMember, it actually, we can see that this string, very important, is actually an object.
Okay. Wait, okay, so first, explain what a pipe is. I know what it is, but for people who don't know what it is.
Okay, so a pipe is this a vertical bar right here. And it essentially pipes the output from the first command into the next command.
Okay, so then I'm piping that into get-member, and what is that doing?
So getMember tells you, okay, let me back up a bit. You're familiar with some other programming languages, right? How objects have methods and variables attached to them.
Okay, so the day that we were doing that, he used a football analogy that just didn't, like a draft pick, like it just didn't really like click with me. So if you could like
go over objects
just a little bit.
Okay, so an object is a kind of like a concept in computer science where it's essentially like a piece of. It's kind of hard to explain objects. It's a piece of
just don't use football and we're good.
Don't use football. It's a piece of data that you can do computations on that have built-in functions. So it allows you to transform it or alter in some way, and also has multiple, well, it could have one, but multiple variables attached to it. So it's kind of like this package that has both data and algorithms attached to it. And it's kind of like a blueprint that allows you to create
instances.
Instances of that object. It's very conceptual.
Well, the way that I've heard it described is like a car, and like you can like customize different parts of it, and like maybe there will be, when you have the object or the thought of a car, there are certain things attached to it that are you know, like wheels or like other things that like you can break apart and change. Like, is that kind of like a rough analogy for like?
Yeah, car's the most common analogy people use to describe objects. But so yeah, let's just go with that. So if you could think of a car as an object, the object is the abstract idea of a car. So a car has things like you said, like wheels, like paint color, like year, make, and model. Those are all the data associated with it. And it can also do things like it can drive, it can brake, it can turn. Those are all of like the algorithms or functions associated with it.
Okay.
So if you just have this this blank object called car, you can create instances of it. So you can make a car that's like, 2012 Kia Sorento or whatever, and then you can have it do things, but then you can create another instance of it that's a different car.
So one way I've used an object before, while barely kind of understanding it, was in Python when I was working with wireless data, especially when I was working with it in Jupyter Notebook. I would turn it into a type of data that was an object. And at that point, I was able to do all sorts of great stuff with it because there were so many built-in functions that it allowed me in any moment to take what was just basically a blueprint to turn it into any one of those things and make it a real instance.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very useful if you want to like just reuse something, or you have like a good example is like in a video game they might have like a character object where they have kind of like a default template of like, this is what their skin looks like. These are the things they can do things like say, they can do things like walk, and there's just a template, and then they can take that and create multiple different types of characters from that one template.
Way to use playing Assassin's Creed to do work. That's great. I really like that because, you know, eventually you get through all the mercenaries, they all kind of look the same because it's just a template and they're just putting different kind of variables on it.
Yeah, I've been going at Assassin's Creed hard during the quarantine.
That's great. Cool. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, okay, cool. All right, so as you can see in here in PowerShell, when we create a string that's equal to like a quoted string, it's not actually a primitive data type, which is not an object. I feel like I'm getting ahead of myself again.
No, it makes sense. So a primitive data type is just like just the data. This has a little bit more attached to it when it's creating it.
Right. So in PowerShell, it doesn't seem like there really are primitive data types. Everything is an object.
Okay, so in Bash, like you could save something as just a string and then like use it as a string, but here when you create the variable, it's like a full-blown object.
It's an object, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and so when you use this function getMember, which is extremely useful, you can use it on all like everything you come across in PowerShell. Like if you're using a commandlet or you're using just whatever PowerShell throws at you, you can use this function getMember to kind of look under the hood and see what you can do with it and what kind of data is associated with it. So it's a very useful tool to use. So you can see that we have I pass string to getMember, and if you look at all of the things you can do with it.
Clone, compare to, copy to, ends with, equals, get enumerator, get hash code. Whoa. So are these all built-in stuff you can do in PowerShell just on any variable?
Well, no, these are all the methods associated with this
particular
system.string object.
Okay, all right.
So if we did
so these are all the methods you can act on a string object. Okay, got it.
Yeah. So like, see this length. See how it's a property and not a method. So if you're familiar with dot notation, right?
No.
Okay. So let's do a string. In order to act upon objects, we use this thing called dot notation, which is after the object we put a period, and then after that period we type whatever we want to do with it.
Okay, I did know that. I just didn't know it was called dot notation.
Okay, so
I just remember that it's the way that I access objects.
Oh, okay, cool. Okay, so if we do dot length, it tells us that this string has a length of 6.
Tim has a length of 7.
Tim?
Yeah, my object is Tim.
What's the string itself?
Moronus.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay, that makes more sense.
Yeah.
So that's an example of using a property. Let's do like a string dot. Let's look at one of these methods. Let's do dot replace.
Okay. Tim dot replace.
Okay. So anytime you use there's an object has two fundamental method or a property.
Okay.
Methods are functions. They're algorithms that allow you to transform the object in some way.
Okay.
Properties are just a simple bit of data that is something about the object. So with dot length, we just put dot length. With dot replace, since it's a method, we have to use these parentheses to basically give it an input to the method.
Okay, so this is like equivalent to like an argument in Bash, where we're like passing some data along with a command.
Okay. Yeah, exactly. So it's like if you did like attack, arg, and then you typed in the argument. It's like that, but instead we're using the more object-oriented syntax for that. So let's say, what did I make my string equal to? String. So if I do dot replace and I do string, I want to replace that with Timothy. All right, we can now see that whoa.
Wait, I'm confused by that. So you're indicating the string in the first part, and then you're saying acting replace on it, but then you're passing string again and Timothy?
Okay, so I did something really stupid, and the value of my string variable is string.
Yeah.
So that was really dumb. I apologize for the confusion. But it didn't actually work, so let me see what's going on. I might have to do it this way. String dot replace. Okay, so there you can see what I did. I used the dot replace method attached to the object, and I replaced all the letters that match string with Timothy.
Okay. So what I didn't understand was why. I thought that it was just replacing the entire thing and basically totally swapping out the data. But what you're saying is this is actually just first indicating what to replace and then indicating what to replace it with.
Yeah, so the first argument is what you want to replace.
Right.
So let's just say I want to replace T. And then I want to replace that with Mott. I don't know why I chose Mott. I'm just choosing Mott.
All right.
And then if we look at string again, it's Mott Timothy. Which makes no sense. But yeah, you can see that with this like object structure, you have a lot more power than if it were just a primitive data type on its own.
Cool. And okay, so some of these also seem interesting, like get. What is? I'm just curious. Do you know what get hash code is? Is that to generate a hash for a file?
I think it just generates a hash code from the string characters.
Okay. All right. Interesting. Yeah. To type to integer. Oh, is this to change it to base 64?
Yeah. You well, wait, where?
To you int 64? I'm just being hopeful.
Oh, you int? No, I think that's an unsigned int.
Sad. Okay.
So it just turns it into an integer of 64-bit integer.
Well, that's less useful. But
it doesn't change it into base 64, unfortunately.
Okay, well, I think I've got the general hang of an object then. Are there any other interesting methods to try out?
Let's just try a few data types. Like, let's create a new variable. I'm going to call mine int. I'm going to set it equal to 32. And then if we do int get number, we can see that this is a different type of object called int32. And you can see it has different methods associated with it.
Yeah, I see that.
So you can convert it to a char, you can convert it to a double. For those who don't know, a char is just a character. A double is a long decimal number. Yeah. So you can do this get member thing with any type of object, and it'll tell you all of the methods you could possibly run in it, and all of the properties that it has.
Interesting.
So it's a very useful thing to learn.
To double. Interesting.
Oh, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself.
That's okay. Cool.
So moving on, speaking of interesting things to learn, one other very useful commandlet is the get help commandlet. So if you use the get help commandlet, let's look at get member. Just type get help, and then after that get member. And you're very familiar with this on Linux.
Oh yeah, just the general.
But it's even more powerful.
All right.
So yeah, it gives you like a synopsis, a syntax description, etc. People who are familiar with Linux, this layout will look really familiar.
So this is like running the man page, basically, or just the help page?
I think it's just the help page. But the one other thing you can do is if you type get help, get member, you can also say parameter as a additional argument. Let's do name. Well, okay, so if we look at this, it gives us detailed information about that specific parameter that's required. So you can use the get help as kind of like the doorway to all different kinds of help. If we do help get member by itself, it will provide us this generic kind of description. But we can add arguments to the get help commandlet, and it'll provide more detailed help about specific parts of the commandlet you're looking at.
Useful. That's very useful.
Yeah, so this you can see we looked at the parameter called name, which you can see up here when we did the help get member. There's a parameter called name. And then this is just a very detailed breakdown of the name parameter. So it says, is it required? No. The default value is none. Does it accept pipeline input? No, it does not. Yeah. So I thought that was very useful.
Yeah, that is useful.
And then another thing you can do is you can do get member, and then you can do get help, get member, and you can do TAC examples. And whoa, yeah, you can see it provides us with a huge amount of examples with how to use that function.
Oh, cool. Okay. So you can literally just see like where you can basically drop in your own commands if you want to just do that.
Yeah, so let's look at, so for instance, this is an example of how to use it. I'm not going to read the whole description. Here's another example. But you can see like this example, for instance, is basically how we were using it before.
Yeah.
The get service, pipe, get member. Yeah, so if you're ever using a commandlet and you don't know exactly how it's used, or you want to see the parameters, or you want to just get an example on how to use it, PowerShell has you covered. And if there's a specific commandlet that doesn't have help for, if you type in getlet and it doesn't have that on file, it'll ask if you want to download the help file, and it'll immediately download it and then display it on your terminal.
Nice.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so now that we know a little bit about objects, do you want to create a custom object?
Yeah.
Not just a system string or a system integer. Do you want to create a custom one?
Okay, so what's the difference?
So when we were doing the string and the integer, those were built-in object types. So we had those the methods and the data types basically pre-assigned to us.
Right.
Because Windows assumed what we wanted it to be, and it gave us a bunch of stuff that we could do with it. But we can also build our own objects with our own custom methods and our own custom parameters associated with them. Or not parameters, properties.
Cool.
Yeah, so in order to do that, we have to use this, well, I'm just going to call it a hash table. Because we have to use the hash table, well, okay, so let me back up a second. In order to do this, we're going to create a hash table, which is the equivalent of what you're familiar with as a dictionary.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So in order to define it, I'm just creating a variable called hash table. In order to define a dictionary, we use this @ symbol.
Mm-hmm.
Then we use a curly brace. And then we do the key value pairs. So let's say we want to make this is going to be a car, because we like the example of a car.
All right.
Let's do color equals red. Make equals Toyota. No favoritism. And model. Oh, my bad. They should be separated by semicolons, not commas.
Got it.
All right. Oh, I have to make model equals Corolla. Okay, so that's just a hash table. If we do a hash table and we do get member, you can see that the name type is just a hash table. It's not actually an object. Well, it is an object, but it's not a custom object.
Right.
It's a hash table. So it has all the properties of a hash table, which are basically the properties of a dictionary. It allows you to, let's see what it allows you to do. Look at the values, get a count, item, all of these things. If we want to turn this hash table into our own custom object, we use, I'm throwing you a lot of new syntax here.
Yeah.
We use the keyword PS custom object. Sorry.
All right, Windows.
Okay, so I know I keep comparing this to other object-oriented languages, but that's because it has a lot of similarities with it. So I don't know if you've ever used Java or C++ or any of those languages where you have to explicitly declare an object.
Yeah.
You know how you have to put like int this, or you have to basically say what type it is before you define it. This is the same thing. So by using the brackets PS custom object, we're defining what type of object this is.
Okay, so we're declaring to the system like that this is a certain type of data.
Yeah, exactly.
Got it.
So the only thing that's different than a normal object-oriented language is the brackets.
Okay.
Yeah, so if we do that to hash table, first of all, I totally spelled Corolla wrong.
Yeah, I noticed that. I assumed it was for like copyright reasons.
I don't think Toyota cares.
Sure. Yeah.
But now if we do this, oh, it's the same. Oh, that's because I messed up real quick. Okay, so if we assign hash table, or let's just do my object. So if we assign basically the hash table and then saying this is a new object in front of it.
Okay.
And then we do my object. Okay, now you can see it's different. It's not a hash table anymore. It's a system.management.automation.ps custom object.
Okay. All right. So it's highly custom.
Yes, and now you can see it has different different methods and properties associated with it, as opposed to just the hash table object, which has all of these built-in methods and properties. You can see that now it has these built-in methods and properties, including color, make, and model.
Hey, okay, so
Yeah.
it actually has a now that we've built in. Okay, cool.
Yeah, so there are more advanced ways of creating new objects, which we will get into later when we get more into Active Directory. But those are more advanced, so we'll kind of ease you onto them.
Okay, and for this, if I wanted to create a specific instance now of a particular color, make it, and model, could I do that from this my object that was just created?
Yeah, well, you don't need to use my object. You would basically rename the variable.
Oh, okay.
So see, the $ hash table is like the template,
Okay.
and then the my object is the instance.
All right, got it.
Yeah, so if you wanted to do my second object, and then it would be the same thing. And then you could put that inside of a loop to make it easier if you wanted to do multiple ones. And this is also a rudimentary version of creating objects. This method only allows you to create new properties and not methods.
Okay.
Just a note. Creating new methods is something we'll get into later.
Okay.
All right, so let's do more stuff. All right, so let's do a little side turn, and we're gonna start using these things to build scripts.
Okay.
All right, so before we build the script, let's have something for a script to do. I think the easiest example is just to like ping something, and then maybe after that we can like trace the route, just as kind of like a basic thing in order to build a script around, so we can get an idea of how to make one.
Okay.
All right, so so what I'm gonna do real quick is I'm going to create a text file. First, I'm going to navigate to a directory where I can have files. I'm going to delete. Okay. I'm going to use this add content commandlet. Excuse me. Path. Let's just do places.text, and then value equals, these are different IPs I want to ping. So let's do localhost. Let's do 8.8.8.8, and let's do Varonis.com.
Nice.
Yeah, I think that should work. So if we this get content is also very useful. It will get the contents of any file, and it will turn it into an object. Whew. My bad.
Popular.
So get content, and then places.txt, and we can see the contents of the file.
Okay.
So it just has those 3 values that I wrote to it. And now let's try pinging them. So in order to ping each object in the file, we're going to use a for each loop.
Okay, I know that.
Yeah, so you know how for loops work in Python, right?
Right.
So it iterates over each item in the grouping. So in PowerShell, we use a for each loop. So hold on, sorry. I forgot what I was supposed to do for a second. Content, text. Okay, sorry about that. Did we stopped at a good place, right? We were quiet for a second.
Yeah, but we can't stop. It's all on camera now, so just power through it for next
Oh,
time.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so in order to ping these places, we could try to use the get content command with places.txt, and then pipe that to test connection. And text connection is basically the fancy version of ping.
Oh, okay. So if I want to check a connection on a Windows PC, I can do test connection. What does that look like by itself?
Yeah, let's try it out real quick. Looks like this.
Okay, cool.
So it's basically the same thing as ping. In fact, I think ping might be the exact same thing. No, it's slightly different. You can see the format's different. So text connection is a fancier...
Yeah, it's laid out more nicely too.
Yeah, exactly. So in order to test connection on each of those items in the places.text, you might just think I could use get content, places.text, and then pipe that to test connection. But it doesn't work. Wait. No, well, it doesn't work for not the reason that it says. Yeah. Yeah, the input object cannot be bound to any parameters, blah, 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 blah. So in order to actually do it, what we're going to need to use is a for each loop. So we could use get content, places.txt. We can pipe that to, this is a very inelegant way, in my opinion, of doing it for each object. All right, so what we can do instead is we can use that PS custom object thing that we used before, and we can do a at I'll go over this in just a second. I know it's a lot to take in. So this should work. All right, so you can see it's pinging.
Oh yeah, it is. Okay.
Yeah, it's going to go through each thing, including Varonis.com.
Hey, okay, cool. So now it's able to accept it properly. So what's the difference here? What changed?
Okay, so what we did is instead of just piping a bunch of the whole list into test connection, we used a for each object loop, and when we use a for each object, we don't specify the iterating variable. What that is its default thing, which is $_. That's whatever item you're iterating over.
Okay, so the equivalent of that would be for I.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
For I.
Right.
You can also use I can't type back on command, but you can also use $_ or you can use $PS item, and those are the same thing.
Why is it so long, PowerShell?
Well, you can use the underscore.
Yeah, okay.
I think PowerShell likes to be verbose, just so you understand what's happening.
I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, kind of like some languages try to do, but they fail at it. Sorry, just throwing a little shade on Java right there. Yeah, and what we're doing here is when we create a PS custom object, we're assigning each of those strings inside of that text file to a computer name value. And if we look at test connection get member, get help, get test connection. Test connection is not an object, so get member doesn't work.
There
we can see that the first argument is computer name.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so if we assign each thing to computer name and set it equal to each object in the thing, when it's piped to text connection, it'll read each one as an argument.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So that's an easy way that we can use the loop to just automate a task of just checking the connection.
Mm-hmm. And this is a one-line solution, and in my opinion, it's a bit clunky. There's another way you can use a for each loop that's a little bit more elegant. So you can do a for each. Let's do line. Wait. First, let's specify the file. So file equals places.txt. And we can do a for each. Let's do line in get content file. And then all we have to do is test connection line.
Oh, that's handy. Okay.
Yeah, so let me make sure this works. Yeah, it works. So
I like that a lot better.
I know, right?
To my Linux brain, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's a lot simpler in my opinion. The course has it you learn it the other way, and it's useful if you want to learn more about how pipes work. But if you're just trying to do this, I think this is a much more elegant solution. So as you can see, the for each loop, we basically have an item we're going over, which is file, specifically get the contents of the file, and that's broken down into each of its elements line. So for line in file, test connection on the line.
Got it.
Yeah,
I like that a lot. I think
Yeah.
that's just as something that I can throw around and maybe put another thing in there and then have different variables that it's cycling through. That makes sense to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. All right. Yeah. Okay. So let's see. All right, so I think we're ready to make a script.
Okay, let's try it.
All right, so instead of doing this directly in PowerShell, let's use the PowerShell ISE.
Tim, what is that?
So you've heard of an IDE, right?
Yes.
The ISE is Integrated Scripting Environment. So
okay, I tentatively like that.
It's an editor. It's basically a fancy editor for you to write scripts in.
Hey, cool. Okay.
So let's take that away.
Do I need to open that as an administrator, or is it automatically?
If you're, you should probably open it as administrator. Yes.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, I mean, you can still do stuff, but any command that requires administrator privileges, you're going to want to do an administrator.
Cool.
Okay, so, and then you're going to want to go to View on your screen and go to Show Script Pane.
Got it.
So for anyone opening PowerShell ISE for the first time, you're going to want to go to View. This is going to initially be disabled. You're just going to have this console, so it's basically just like PowerShell. You go to Show Script Pane, and then it'll bring up this editor for you to write scripts in. Yeah, so let's take our silly pinging loop and turn it into a script.
All right, cool.
All right, so the first thing we're going to want to do is, what was the first thing we did?
We made the text file that had all the hosts in it.
Right. Okay, let me get the full
path
of that file. I think it's just this, and then. Okay, so let's just do.
Is there any way to enlarge the text on that?
Yes, I'm sure there is.
So there's zoom in. I just thought if that's.
Control Add.
Yeah, cool.
There we go.
It's because we care about all of you.
Let me bring this up. Okay. File path equals. Okay, so that's just the name of our file, the location of our file path.
Okay.
And then we can do a for each loop like we did. Line in get content. Okay, so this is going to start looking more and more like we're in like an object-oriented.
Yeah, it's starting to look familiar.
Yeah. Okay, so let's fancy this up a bit and let's do a conditional if statement, because if we're writing a script, we might as well have some conditions. Otherwise, we could just all write it all at once.
Right.
So. I'm going to use this if test connection line tac quiet. And what this tac quiet argument does is it basically returns true or false.
Okay.
So if it gets a connection, it'll evaluate to true. And then you're familiar with this if syntax.
Yeah.
It's just whatever. It's an if statement. You have an if condition. You type if, and then parentheses is the evaluation or the test.
And then after that is what happens if it passes.
If it passes, yep. Okay, so let's say we get a connection. We are able to get a connection. Then what we can do is we can do test. I believe it's test net connection. Yeah, test net connection. Line. Before I put it in an if statement, let's just run it like this to show what test connection outputs to.
Okay.
So you see, it just comes out true. For the next one, it should hopefully come out true. And then for Veronis, who knows?
Always true. Great.
Hey, there we go. Okay, cool. So we're basically my mouse is not like me today. So when we do surround that with an if, we're basically saying if true, if false. Test net connection.
Online,
and then we're going to use the trace route
argument,
yeah.
Cool.
And so if it gets a connection, it will then trace the route for us.
Okay, cool.
So hopefully this runs. I don't feel like there shouldn't be any reason why it wouldn't.
Well, look at this, doing a trace route. Hey, cool. And it's
So
returning it.
localhost, obviously, there's not a whole lot to show. But 8.8.8.8, which I looked up. It's like it's Google, but it's like the server's like in Washington, D.C.
Huh.
Or like just outside. Yeah, so we can see somewhere near Seattle and then Washington, D.C. So you can see all of the IP addresses it's gone along. Started somewhere in Washington, and you can see just, if you want to go look up all of the IP addresses, you can basically just see it move across the country.
Okay, cool.
We're still waiting on Varonis, though.
I mean, Tim, all roads lead to Varonis.
Yeah, but it's taken a while.
Yeah. Well, it's because there's so many possibilities, Tim. But I see the point. This is a way that we can take something that would manually, you would have to do all these commands individually. If I was a system administrator in Windows and I wanted to test my ability to connect to certain critical websites, this could be a way, or certain critical domains or DNS servers, for example, this could be a way I could automate all of that just by throwing together a text file and then making a script in the, I didn't even know that there was a PowerShell.
An editor, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, we should come back to this because we're almost out of time today. In fact, I think we are out of time today.
Oh, we don't get to do my sequel? My cool little...
No, that's going to have to be for next time.
Oh, damn, okay.
But I'm just so interested in the ISE. I think
we're going to use more of it, don't worry.
Okay, cool. So this is probably a good place to stop, unless there's anything on this particular example you want to show.
No. I just really wanted to show my, well, I guess it'll have to be next time, but all right.
What is it? What are you doing?
It's using all of the stuff we learned today to very simply grab someone's Firefox history and just display it on screen.
Evil.
Yeah.
How long would it take?
10 minutes?
Okay, let's do it next time.
Okay.
All right. Cool. So today we've taken a look at the very basics of PowerShell. We've gotten into objects, all the methods we can use, and we've even used a scripting program that I didn't even know existed in Windows to begin to do things like test the connection and run a trace route on active connections, all from a very short script. In fact, how many lines is that? All of like 5? 4?
Yeah. I mean, it's only really 4 lines. The rest are just curly brackets.
Cool. So this has been another episode of Hacking with Friends where we focus on PowerShell, and we're going to keep coming back to this because it is a really interesting topic. If you guys want to dive more into this, please go to varonis.com/PowerShell and check out the free course there. We're going off of a lot of content from it, and we'll be doing a couple more follow-up ones that cover this and Active Directory because we feel like it's a really interesting topic nowadays with so many people working remotely and basically having their entire systems administered by this awesome way of keeping tabs on enterprise computers. It's really cool for hackers like us to know how that stuff works, so we can hopefully come up with some interesting ways of messing with it.
I'm sure we will.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. If you like this content, make sure to share it. If you want to watch this later or watch some of the previous episodes of Hacking with Friends, you can go to youtube.com/c/SecurityFWD, and you can catch all of these episodes. Make sure to subscribe and share with friends who might like this or might be afraid of all the all the tools that we're trying out. And we'll see you next time.